Okay, so this video is going to be on how we're going to do simplifying radicals in an Algebra 2 manner. And so if you're not sure how to simplify them, go back and watch this first video on just simplifying radicals. And I have to say on the first video too, that even after I told you guys in the beginning to make sure you put a plus or minus, I forgot to put plus or minuses in my answers, right? So this is really plus or minus 6 times the square root of 2, and this is plus or minus 6. So don't forget to put those plus or minuses in like I did. All right, so let's see now how we need to do this in Algebra 2. So in Algebra 2, we might have something like the square root of negative 24, and we would have to simplify it. In Algebra 1, we would have said no real solution for this. We would have stopped. We wouldn't have done anything else. We would have just said no real solution. Now we've learned about imaginary numbers, right? We know I is the square root of negative 1. And so now we can actually do this, whereas before we would have stopped. So at some point, I know it's going to be a plus or minus, right? Because we talked before about 2 positive numbers and 2 negative numbers give you the same thing. So I'm going to have a plus or minus here. And I is the square root of negative 1. So whenever I see a negative, I know there's going to be an I as part of the answer. I don't know what this is going to be in here, and I don't know what this is going to be. But I know I'm going to have plus or minus, and I'm going to have an I because it's negative. So really now, I'm just doing my same skills from Algebra 1. I'm going to ignore the negative because I've taken care of it with that I, and I'm just going to factor the 24 like I normally would factor it. So I'm going to do a prime factor tree. I see it's even. That means I can divide it by 2. I have 2 times 12, cross out the 24. 12 is even. 2 times 6, cross out the 12 because I'm done with it. 6, 2 times 3, cross out the 6. So you can see I have a pair of 2's, and then I have this 2 and that 3 with no pair. So again, it's Friday night. You only get to go out if you have a date. So these 2's have a date. They get to go out. They're leaving this inside and coming out here. So they're going to come outside. This 2 and that 3 do not have a date, so they have to stay inside. And again, when you go out on a date, you just take 1 car. So when these 2's come out, they just come out as 1. So my answer here is plus or minus 2i, and then I simplify what's inside, which is 6. So let's try one more. Let's do the square root of negative 54. Again, right away I know it's going to be plus or minus. You should write that down so you don't forget to do it like I did. Plus or minus. There's going to be something here. I don't know what. There's going to be an I, a square root sign, and something there. So we're trying to find out what goes there and there. The I takes care of that negative for me, right? Because I is the square root of negative 1. So that is getting rid of that negative. So now we're going to simplify this. If we do a prime factor tree, I can see it's even. 54 is the same thing as 2 times 27. 27 is the same thing as 3 times 9. 9 is the same thing as 3 times 3. And again, as I talked about in the first video on this, you know you've done this right if I multiply 2 times 3 times 3 times 3, they should equal 54. And they do. So I have a pair of 3's, and I have a singleton 3 and a singleton 2. So these 3's come out, but the 2 has to stay inside, and the 3 has to stay inside. So again, this 2 is coming from there, and this 3 is there, and then I have, these are my ones that get to come out. That's where that 3 came from. So I'm going to want to simplify. When I simplify, I get plus or minus 3i, and on the inside, 2 times 3 is 6. And again, you multiply what's outside by what's inside. So that is my answer. So again, the only difference here on what we did in Algebra 1 is you got to take care of that negative. And the way you take care of that negative is with that I. And then you just factor it the same way you would factor an Algebra 1 problem. But you just need to make sure you keep the plus and minus and the I.